The following program is a presentation of the Civil War Broadcasting Network, available on the free YouTube channel, Dr. E.C. Fields, and other social media. Permission to copy and distribute is granted and indeed encouraged. It is the intent that the reading of these letters will lead to a better understanding of Grant as a man and the times in which he lived. It is hoped that these readings will reveal his personal evolution as an individual and a commander. These letters may be found in the papers of Ulysses S. Grant, now housed at the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library at Mississippi State University. Remember, you are the future of our past. I left Galena, Illinois on April 25th of 1861, going with the Joe Davis County Guards to Springfield, Illinois. And I was there for a few days, and in those few days, I wrote some letters, a couple to my wife, one to Governor Yates, one to my sister, and I should like to share those letters with you. Springfield, Illinois, April 27th, 61. Dear Julia, on account of the cars not connecting properly, we did not arrive here until evening yesterday, and as no mail gets through as fast as passengers, you will not probably get this until Tuesday morning. I fully made up my mind last night and had not changed it this morning to start home today, and consequently did not intend to write you at all. Mr. Washburn, however, came to me this morning and prevailed upon me to remain over for a day or two to see the result of a bill now before the legislature and which will no doubt pass today, authorizing the governor to ration and pay the surplus troops now here, and to arrive and to appoint suitable persons to take charge of them until such times as they may be organized into companies and regiments. All the companies that have arrived so far, and that is near the whole number called for, have brought with them from 20 to 60 men more each than the law allows. The overplus have, as a matter of course, to be cut off. These are the men the legislature are providing for. The governor told Mr. Washburn last night that should the legislature pass the provision for them, he wanted me to take the command and drill them until they are organized into companies and placed in regiments. In case I should accept this position, I may remain here several weeks. In any event, however, I shall go home, if but for a day or two, so as to be there on next Sunday morning. Our trip here was a perfect ovation at every station. The whole population seemed to be out to greet the troops. There is such a feeling aroused through the country now as has not been known since the Revolution. Every company called for in the President's proclamation has been organized and filled to near double the amount that can be received. In addition to that, every town of 1,000 inhabitants and over has from 1 to 4 additional companies organized, ready to answer the next call that will be made. I find but few old acquaintances here, except from Galena. Captain Pope of the Army is here, mustering in the volunteers. I see by telegraphic dispatch that K. McKenzie died yesterday. So they go, one at a time. I shall write to your father about Monday. Kiss all the children for me. Write as soon as you get this, Euless. On the 29th, I wrote a letter to my sister Mary, my youngest sister. In fact, the sister that was born after I left to go to the academy. Springfield, April 29th, 1861. Dear Sister, I come to this place several days ago, fully expecting to find a letter here for me from Father. As yet, I have received none. It was my intention to have returned to Galena last evening, but the governor detained, and I presume will want me to remain with him until all the troops now called into service, or to be so called, are fully mustered in and completely organized. The enthusiasm through this state surpasses anything that could have been imagined 3 weeks ago. Only 6 regiments are called for here, while at least 30 could be promptly raised. The governor and all others in authority are harassed from morning until night with patriotic men and such political influence as they can bring, to obtain first promises of acceptance of their companies if there should be another call for troops. The eagerness to enter companies that were accepted by the governor was so great that it has been impossible for the commanders of companies to keep their numbers within the limits of the law. Consequently, companies that have arrived here have all had from 10 to 60 men more than could be accepted. The legislature on Saturday last passed a bill providing for the maintenance and discipline of these surplus troops for 1 month, unless sooner mustered into service at the United States under a second call. I am convinced that if the South knew the entire unanimity of the North for the Union and maintenance of law, and how freely men and money are offered to the cause, they would lay down their arms at once in humble submission. There is no disposition to compromise now. Nearly everyone is anxious to see the government fully tested as to its strength and see if it is not worth preserving. The conduct of Eastern Virginia has been so abominable through the whole contest that there would be a great deal of disappointment here if matters should be settled before she is thoroughly punished. This is my feeling, and I believe it universal. Great allowance should be made for South Carolinians, for the last generation have been educated from their infancy to look upon their government as oppressive and tyrannical and only to be endured till such time as they might have sufficient strength to strike it down. Virginia and other border states have no such excuse and are therefore traitors at heart as well as in act. I should like very much to see the letter Aunt Rachel wrote Clara, or a copy of it. Can you send it? When I left Galena, Julia and the children were very well. Jessie had been very sick for a few days, but was getting much better. I have been very anxious that you should spend the summer with us. You have never visited us, and I don't see why you can't. 2 of you often travel together, and you might do so again, and come out with Clara. I do not like to urge anything of the kind, lest you should think that I ignored entirely the question of economy, but I do not do so. The fact is, I have had my doubts whether or not it would not be more prudent for all of you to lock up and leave until the present excitement subsides. If Father were younger and Simpson strong and healthy, I would not advise such a course. On the contrary, I would like to see every Union man in the border slave states remain firm at his post. Every such man is equal to an armed volunteer at this time in defense of his country. There is very little that I can tell you that you do not get from the papers. Remember me to all at home and write me at once at this place. Brother Euless. I should mention also regarding the admonition that I gave Mary, they were living, my parents, in Covington, Kentucky, and I am suggesting that perhaps they would want to get out of Kentucky across the river into Cincinnati and Ohio. On April 29th, I wrote a letter to Governor Yates, a report actually. Springfield, Illinois, April 29th, 1861. His Excellency Richard Yates, Governor and Commander-in-Chief, Illinois State Militia. Sir, in compliance with your request, I have visited the State Armory and made careful examination of all the muskets now in possession of the state authorities and beg leave to report. Number of muskets that are in serviceable condition, 60. That require repairs, 262. Musketoons that are serviceable, 93. Musketoons that require repairs, 40. Rifles issued to troops, 80. Cadet rifles, 60. Mini rifles issued, 90. Making altogether 905 pieces. The muskets are the old Army pattern, changed from the flintlock, are in good order but need cleaning. I do not know as to the practicability of rifling them, and have not a correct idea of their value. Respectfully, your obedient servant, U.S. Grant. On May the 1st, I wrote a letter to my wife, and it is revealing. General Headquarters, State of Illinois, Adjutant General's Office, Springfield, May 1, 1861. Dear Julia, I have an opportunity of sending a letter direct to Galena by Mr. Corwith, and as it will probably reach you a day or two earlier than if sent by mail, I avail myself of the chance. I enclose a letter from Father for you to read. As I shall probably be home on Saturday evening, I shall say nothing about what my intentions are for the future. In fact, my plans will have to mature from circumstances as they develop. At present, I am on duty with the governor at his request. Occupation, principally smoking, and occasionally giving advice as to how an order should be communicated, etc. I'm going this morning, however, into the Adjutant General's office to remain until some regularity is established there, if I can bring about that regularity. The fact is, however, as I told the governor, my bump of order is not largely developed and papers are not my forte, and therefore my services may not be as valuable as he anticipates. However, I am in to do all I can, and I will do my best. We receive the St. Louis morning papers here at 10 o'clock a.m. every day of the day issued, and every day someone is here from that city. The state of affairs there is terrible, and no doubt a terrible calamity awaits them. Stationing Illinois troops within striking distance of St. Louis may possibly save the city. Business is entirely prostrated, and the best houses are forced to close. I see by the Missouri Republican that Charles Blow and Company are among the number. But for the little piece of stratagem used to get the arms out of the arsenal to this place, they would have fallen into the hands of secessionists, and with their hands strengthened with these, an attempt would have been made to take the city entirely under control, and terrible slaughter would have taken place. Great numbers of people are leaving Missouri now in every direction except south. In some of the northern towns of the state, merchants and businessmen are leaving with all their personal property. Missouri will be a great state ultimately, but she is set back now for years. It will end in more rapid advancement, however, for she will be left a free state. Negroes are stampeding already, and those who do not will be carried further south, so that the destiny of the state in that respect may now be considered settled by fate and not political parties. Kiss the children for me. You need not write, as I will be home soon. Euless. Now, some notes of explanation about this letter. In it, I refer to working for the Adjutant General of Illinois. I was a civilian with no military rank and serving at the request and pleasure of the governor. I'm addressed as Captain Grant because all know that's the rank I held in the old Army. I will ultimately receive $130 for my services from April 27th to May 23rd. The bump that I refer to is the phrenology, the science of bumps on the heads being indicative of certain talents or lacking thereof, which is total bosh and nonsense. Charles Blow and Company was a St. Louis wholesale drug company. Taylor Blow, whom I reference, was a member of that firm and one of the signatories for my position of St. Louis County Engineer in 1859. But there's more of interest to Charles Blow. He was also the man who freed Dred Scott. His wife and 2 children on May 26 of 1857. His family had owned Dred and sold him to an Army surgeon. Dred filed suit for his freedom. Dr. Emerson, by that time his owner, had died. The Supreme Court ruled against him. Dr. Emerson's widow had by this time remarried Calvin Chaffee, an ardent abolitionist who had been elected to Congress not knowing his wife owned the most famous slave in America, Dred Scott, and was severely criticized for being married to a slave owner. He persuaded his wife to return Dred and his family to Taylor Blow, who by then had become an abolitionist and who in turn freed all of them. Pro-Confederate Governor Claiborne F. Jackson called for militia to train for home defense. Captain Nathaniel Lyons of the U.S. Army, who was 11th in his class of 52 at West Point, class of 1841, anticipated a raid on the St. Louis Armory by Confederate sympathizers. He disguised himself as a farm woman in a dress and investigated the area because he knew he'd be immediately recognized in uniform. He's got bright red hair, not hard to spot. He became suspicious of what was about to happen and arranged a surprise raid on the St. Louis Arsenal on the night of April 25th to seize the arms there and transported them ultimately to Springfield, Illinois. While his action saved the armory and probably Missouri for the Union, it was a gross overstepping of his authority. A riot erupted as he marched his prisoners through the city and several were killed. He was promoted to Brigadier General of Volunteers on May 17th. He was killed at Wilson's Creek on August 10th. For the moment, that is the extent of the letters that I should like to read to you and reflect about. I hope that I have given you much about which to think. So, until we come together again for recollections and reflections, I am Captain Grant, bidding you adieu.